Welcome to Marin Cyclist, the leading cycling club in Marin County. This video is provided as part of our ongoing education series to help develop riding skills and promote safety on the road. In this video, we will cover the training material used in our on-bike Paceline clinics. This is what you can expect in a Paceline clinic. We'll do introductions, get to know each other a little bit. We'll have a 30 to 60 minute field classroom session, and we're going to cover the material that we cover in this video. Then we'll do 60 to 90 minutes of on-bike instruction. So we're going to take a ride, and we're going to practice what we talk about in the classroom. As we take that ride, we will coach you directly on what you're doing wrong or doing right while we're on the bike. When we get back, we're going to have a post-ride meet and greet, and lunch is on us. Every organization should have a mission statement, and we're no different. So let me read you the mission statement that everyone has agreed on the board. We're here to create a healthy cyclist environment with a focus on education, training, safety, and advocacy. We put on one major cycling event annually, the Marin Century, to raise money to be used to enhance cycling in Marin County and the community in general. And we also provide organized, structured rides and routes to develop rider capabilities, promote cycling in general, and increase safety awareness. So let's kick this off by talking about safety. We have 4 key safety rules in Marin Cyclists, and you can find these on the website. Number 1, follow the law. Your safety and the image of other cyclists depends on you. You have the same rights and responsibilities as vehicles. You must obey traffic signals and stop signs, ride with traffic, and use the rightmost lane headed in the direction you are going. Be predictable. Make your intentions clear to everyone on the road. Ride in a straight line and don't swerve between parked cars. Signal turns and check behind you well before turning or changing lanes. Be conspicuous. Ride where people can see you and wear bright clothing. Consider a front white light, a red rear light, and reflectors. Make eye contact with drivers and don't ride on sidewalks. And lastly, think ahead. Anticipate what drivers, pedestrians, and other people on bikes will do next. Watch for turning vehicles and ride outside the door zone of parked cars. Look out for debris, potholes, and other road hazards. Cross railroad tracks at right angles. So let's get into it. Why ride in a Paceline? Well, it's 2 miles an hour faster if you can ride behind somebody else, and it's 20% less energy than the person on the front. In this clinic, we're going to cover the rules of pacelining, as it were really, but in reality the pack is in fluid motion, and you need to learn to adapt to the conditions at any given time. Everything we talk about are just guidelines, so you'll want to learn to read the situation you find yourself in and participate accordingly. There is, however, one prime directive: never cross wheels. We'll talk about that many times during the clinic, and if we see you doing this on the bike, we're going to let you know. Firstly, don't be a danger to yourself or others. Stay hyper aware by constantly asking yourself, where am I? Where are the other riders around me? And where is the wind? If you're new to pacelining, hold the engaging conversations about the donut shop in Petaluma to a break. And lastly, have fun. In my opinion, there's nothing more fun than pack riding, especially when the pace picks up. Next, let's talk about some general guidelines for a Paceline. First is speed. You always want to maintain the pack speed when moving to the front. Many riders will try to man up or show off by accelerating when moving to the front. The lead rider should always pull off to the side and smoothly decrease speed. The second rider should maintain the speed of the group. If the speed is to be increased for any reason, let's do that slowly and smoothly. We always want to be communicating effectively throughout the Paceline. We want to make sure that people are hearing us. We want to yell things up the line and down the line. We'll use hand signal for turns, stopping, and pointing at objects in the road. No sudden movements. Riders need to ride a straight and steady line. You need to be smooth. Whatever you do in the pace line affects all other riders in group. So be consistent, safe, and predictable. And again, what's our prime directive? Do not ever overlap wheels on the rider in front of you. Also, know your limitations. We all have physical limitations, and do not overexert yourself at the front. Stronger riders should pull longer, weaker riders should pull shorter. Do not be embarrassed to simply pull through immediately. So let's have a talk about etiquette. Please do not blow your nose without pulling off the line. This is especially important these days with the COVID outbreak. If you need to take a bathroom break, just let the leader know. Chances are you're not the only one, and the entire group will stop. Stay off the brakes. Remember, anything you do in the pace line affects everyone else. If you hit the brakes, the rider behind you will ride up your backside. Don't stop pedaling, just soft pedal. Let's keep it smooth, man. And when you're on the front, remember, pull longer, not harder. Pull shorter, not slower. Don't pull so hard or long that you drop yourself. Pace the climbs for the middle of the pack. And please do not act like a dick in traffic. Do not run stop signs. Do not flip off drivers. Do not unclip and offer to fisticuffs with a driver. Do not escalate those situations, because you are representing all of us. Feel free to take a lot of pictures and just keep it cool, man. And a few more. Don't just jump into a strange pace line without asking permission. Some people don't like folks joining them. Don't wear aero bars unless it's actually a tri-ride. And don't wear headphones except for navigation, or in the case you get dropped, you want some comfort music on the way home. And again, it bears repeating, no sudden moves in the pack. There are a lot of different types of rides you might encounter. In Marin Cyclist, we categorize ours, and we're going to go over that in a bit. But generally, I put them in 3 categories. And pace line skills are important in any kind of group ride. The first type is the bakery and wine rides. These are really social events done on a bike. They're a slower talking pace, long stops to eat, drink, and socialize, and no one gets dropped. It's kind of like we're all going somewhere together. Then there are fitness rides for riders who want to improve their fitness and cycling skills, but they're training for events like maybe Amber or the Wine Country Century. So they have some regroups on hills, still like to stop and socialize, but only for a few minutes, not a 4-course meal. You can certainly get dropped on these rides, so you'll want to check the pace chart for expectations on that. And then there are the more advanced rides. In our case at Marin Cyclist, that would be the D-level rides. These are riders who want to maintain a high level of fitness and probably are competing or racing. Most likely they'll show up having watched 5 hours of the Tour de France the night before and had 3 cups of coffee before they start. They're going to want to test themselves, they're going to use more race tactics, and there'll be much less organization in the pack. And they may not want to even talk. So you need to get used to that idea. These are racers. They'll probably go 25 miles without saying a word as fast as they can go. So remember, in these rides, their goal is to drop you. For Marin Cyclist rides, we provide this chart to tell you basically what sort of ride it's going to be. Now it's all relative, of course, depending on who shows up on that day. But most of our rides are A, which are riding at 10 to 13 miles an hour, B, which are riding 13 to 16, or AB, which is a combination of the two. We also have a few C rides at 16 to 18 miles an hour, and occasionally there will be a D ride, which is more like a race than anything else. So if you're trying to figure out where you fit into these groups or these categories, you can use a speed trap. But again, a speed trap is all relative depending on the wind that day, how hilly the course is that you're testing yourself on. And so I'll just give you one example. If you go from the San Marin terrain station in Novato, you go down the bike path and return to the first stoplight in Petaluma, that out and back course is about 18 miles. If your average speed is 11 to 13, go with the A group. 14 to 16, the B, and 17 plus, certainly go with the C or D groups if they exist. In reality, it depends on who shows up and how fit they are on that day. So a quick word on the A, B, B, C, and D group rides. Also, the all group rides. It is expected that these rides will split into groups based on the ability on that day. Unless the ride is declared no drop, the group may not wait for extended periods, so know your limitations. There are many different kinds of pace lines, and you will have to adapt to the situation, of course. But these are the three general types of pace lines that you're likely to encounter. On the left, we have the double pace line. Since we are not riding in the Tour de France, we will not be using the double pace line. We will not be riding 2 abreast, we will not be riding 4 abreast and rotating off each end. On the right, we have the circular pace line. That's a very fast moving pace line. You'll see this encountered when the wind's really blowing and we have a lot of people moving through the line taking very short pulls. The one we're going to focus on in this clinic is the single file pace line. That's where we have everyone in a single file. The person on the front takes their pull and they rotate off to the left and back to the back of the pack. In a pace line, everyone has a job. And in this clinic, we're going to focus on the single file pace line, which is by far the most common and the safest. The most important thing that we can do, however, is to communicate. Always be communicating. The rider on the front should keep the pace steady, point and or yell at any obstacle they see, such as a cow, a car, a pothole, or a stick. The middle riders should always point out those obstacles as well and yell up and down the line any commands that they hear coming from the front or the rear. If you're on the back of the pack, your job is to watch for approaching vehicles and yell up the line. The type of verbal commands you will hear are car back. Everyone needs to echo that forward so the people on the front know there is a car approaching and we may pass soon. If a rider yells flat tire, we need to all echo that up and down the line so that we know that someone has a flat, and we're going to all stop and we're going to assist that person to get the tire fixed so that they can continue on the ride. If you're going to stand up, say we're coming to a hill, it's very good to yell standing, because what happens is when you stand up, your bike lurches backwards, and you don't want to lurch backwards into the person behind you. That could cause an accident. If we're coming to a stop sign, you want to yell stopping. Let everyone know that the entire group is stopping, because the people in the back really can't see what's going on up front. And then finally, a note. If someone is misbehaving in the pace line and they're not following these rules, it's perfectly acceptable to offer constructive criticism. They probably don't even know that they're doing it, and they'll be happy to get that criticism to improve their skills going forward. In a pace line, it's all about the wind. The wind almost never stops blowing here in Marin. But even if there is no headwind, if you're going fast enough, you'll create your own headwind. Wind awareness is most important if you're on the front, and we'll talk about that a bit more next. If you're in the pack, you need to find your sweet spot. I can't tell you where that is, but you'll know it when you find it. It's that spot where you're getting the most shelter from the rider in front of you. When riding in a pace line, it's always good to ask yourself, where am I? Where am I in relation to the other riders? How far back should I be? I say stay a full wheel size back unless you are very experienced and you know the skill set of the other riders you're riding with. How close to the left or right? At least a couple of feet. Most of the time we should be in single file, so that should never be an issue. I always leave myself an out, so a word of caution. If you know you're with experienced riders, you can get pretty close, but I always leave myself an exit and often ride to the left or right of the rider in front, and I have a predetermined exit plan if there's trouble. Which direction are we rotating? Pace lines rotate. You always need to know the answer to that question. Be sure everyone else knows at all times. This can change on road conditions, so we need to communicate. One question that always comes up is, how long should I stay on the front of the pace line? So I'll ask you this. Question 1 is, long enough to reach near exhaustion, but get a high five from your pals on such a magnificent pull? Or number 2, long enough to do your duty, conserve your energy for later, and get back to taking advantage of being in the pace line? Obviously the answer is 2, unless you want to get dropped. My recommendation is to know your limits at the current pace. Take a 15 to 30 second pull as opposed to several minutes. Know what to do when you come to a hill. Again, we want to yell standing as you will lurch back into the rider behind you. What do you do when you come to a long descent? You want to leave a large gap to be able to maneuver and avoid hazards. Do not ever be close to another rider descending at 30 or 40 miles an hour down a hill. And often the question comes up, what if I can't pull at all? Well, if you're being lazy, we're going to know. But if you're struggling, let everyone know, go to the back, and stay out of the rotation. There can be a group of folks only following, but we need to know who you are. When the leader rotates off the front, be sure to leave a gap to let them back into the rotation, and you stay off the back. One modification to the pace line is when we get a crosswind, and we can move into an echelon formation. We only want to assume this formation in a no traffic situation. There are no cars approaching from the rear. There are 2 examples here, wind from the left and wind from the right. The direction of rotation is often into the direction of the pressing wind, and the lead rider needs to be towards the direction of the wind. So if you look at the example on the left, the lead rider is to the left side of the road. Again, we don't want to do this if we have traffic coming. However, if they pull to the left, the riders behind them can echelon to the right and get quite a bit of wind break. And conversely, if the wind is blowing on the right side, we'll rotate to the right, and those riders can echelon to the left. So that rider in the lead always needs to be to the far right side of the road. So the message here is, if we're going into an echelon situation, be aware of where you are. You need to think about how you can help the people behind you. You can fight the wind for them and then rotate back. Next, I want to give you some examples of bad pace line behavior. The first one I'm going to call the wobbler. So you need to ask yourself, am I a wobbler? Are you riding in a straight line? You don't want to be a wobbler because you can be a danger to yourself and others, and nobody's going to want to ride with you. So ask yourself, where am I? If I move to the right, will I push someone into the ditch? If I move to the left, will I push someone toward the yellow line and into oncoming traffic? You want to learn to ride in a very smooth, steady, straight line. The next one I call the rocket. This person, it's their turn to pull, they feel very rested, and they just launch off the front of the pack. The result is the rider wastes a lot of energy that should have gone into helping the pack. And the rider that was just passed, who was doing all the work in the first place, is now going to have to continue to pull and try to catch up or possibly even get dropped. In this case, the entire pace line can become fragmented. In the second example, I call this the pre-stage rocket. This is the rider who comes from 4 positions back and launches off the front. Be clear, this is a race tactic and not a pace line tactic. What do you do as riders in the pack in this case? You ignore it completely. Just keep your pace line organized and steady. because Mr. Rocket will soon wear himself out and be back in no time. Generally, an organized pace line will always be stronger than a single rider, although there are a few exceptions. And my final example, I call the gapper. But note, if you have pace line skills, which you're going to learn in this clinic, it should be nearly impossible to get dropped going into a headwind, because the rider on the front is doing all the work. You get to cruise along behind and stay in the sweet spot. So be like flypaper and stick to the rider in front of you when you're going into a headwind. The gapper is the rider that lets a gap open up in the pack. This rider is getting dropped and can't keep up, but they're in the middle of the pack. The result is that unless the riders behind are watching, a large gap can open up. Everyone in the second group will now have to go around the gapper and work very hard to get back to the pack. This is especially dangerous in a headwind because the second group may not be able to get back to the lead group. Do not be this rider. If you're getting dropped in the middle of the pack, wave everyone to go past and pull to the right. Let's talk about getting dropped, something we don't share at dinner parties with our friends. It happens a lot, and it happens to almost everyone. Because everyone has good days and bad days, especially as you get a little older. It's a huge opportunity to work on your fitness and your skills. And it just says, hey, I was challenged that day. If it's an out and back course, you can catch on and try it again. Otherwise, have a great ride and just go at your own pace back to the house. What you can do is evaluate and learn from the situation. Try to understand what went wrong. Did I eat and hydrate properly? Did I have leg cramps? Do I need to learn how to take electrolytes? And my bike, is it fit right? Was the group just too fast for my current fitness level? Maybe I need to improve. And some days you just don't feel like pushing the pace. One note on really bad form. If the group is going through a stoplight and you get stuck at the light, the group is expected to wait on you. We should never drop anyone at a stoplight. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, learned a thing or two, and will join us for many, many more. Please sign up for one of our clinics, and we hope to see you soon. Let's get out there and ride.